My name's Justin Mardjuki. I'm CEO of Sayvant, which is a clinical documentation AI solution for acute care.
Excellent. For acute care specifically, tell me a little bit more about the problem that you're solving there.
Yeah, so the specific problem in acute care is there's such a wide range of encounters, such a wide range of variability in those encounters that the documentation effort for those physicians in emergency rooms and urgent cares is much greater than something like an orthopedic surgeon, for example, where you can copy and paste the notes to some degree.
Yeah, interesting. And so we're all super excited here at Health and within the ecosystem generally around the potential for AI to help improve efficiency and potentially quality of care and all those really important things. And an area that seems for immediate opportunity is in this assisting with documentation side. Why is it specifically that the acute side requires that particular focus? One from the outside might look and think, well, all documentation requirements are the same.
Yeah, so in 2023, CMS changed their billing guidelines for acute care to really shift away from just a bullet-pointed list, more or less, of the procedures and tasks that were accomplished in that encounter to focus much more on the medical decision-making for that patient. And what that meant is, as a doctor, instead of just typing in the bullet list of procedures, you had to sit down and write out an entire, sometimes page-long medical decision-making of why you diagnose a patient a certain way, why you dispose them in a certain way, and all the differential diagnoses that you ruled out. And as a clinician, that's why you went to school for 10, 15 years, right? To then have to sit down and explain your thinking. That's like us having to explain why, I think I'm not a doctor, but it's like us having to explain why and how we do long division, right? So there's a huge potential for AI to take the decision, the diagnosis that the doctor's already made, right, and help explain their thinking based on all of the clinical and billing guidelines.
Gotcha. And this is out there being used in the wild now, is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's live in over 30 sites. We're doubling that footprint probably in the next 4 to 6 months. So we're seeing really strong adoption because it's such a huge time saver for clinicians, right? You can shrink charting time from 12, 13 minutes per encounter down to 90 seconds. And, you can really see the increased efficiency on the billing, RCM, and quality side as well. So a bit of a win-win there.
Yeah. And how do you approach the, one concern when I speak to CIOs, CTOs, and looking at input, trying to save time, improve efficiency, do more with less, looking at, an AI documentation tool, and particularly in the acute care side, quality and accuracy of information is going to be paramount. We're in healthcare, can't make any mistakes. What kind of safeguards are how do you approach that whole need for innovating really quickly, but also doing things super safely and securely?
Yeah, so two angles to think about. I think the first is that ultimately the traditional metrics around efficiency are the ones that ultimately matter, right? So medical groups are very good at looking at clinician efficiency, charges per hour, charges per encounter, right, and understanding how those tick up or down over time.
Yeah.
So the first most important thing is, are you at minimum not making an impact on those numbers and still able to save physicians time at the end of the shift? Or at best, which we're now seeing in Sayvant, can you actually lead to an increase in those numbers? So that's part one of the guardrail, which is you can't get so enamored with the science project that it's not actually translating to real clinical and efficiency results. The second, on a much more granular level, is thinking about those exact LLM AI guardrails, right? And there's you can imagine thousands of tests that you run iteratively every time you change a prompt, every time you change an agent, right, to make sure that it's only capturing procedures that were mentioned in the room. Mm-hmm. It's not changing a doctor's disposition, right? And so, like many other companies in the space, right, we've put in pretty robust guardrails so you can track this actually on a agent by agent, encounter by encounter basis, and actively review them to have human quality review of these charts.
Yeah. I'm actually interested in also understanding your take on sometimes these tools are almost like shadow IT, or they're brought up through by clinicians because they see the benefit of using these firsthand. Other times, we're very good in healthcare at enforcing technology down on the systems, and this is what you're going to use now, or at least that's what we try and do. How have you found the best adoption for your particular tools within healthcare? Has it been bottom up, top down, or a little bit of that?
So I'm a bit biased because I grew up at the beginning of my SaaS journey at Box, which at the time was competing with Dropbox, and they took polar opposite approaches, right? Box was very enterprise IT driven, very compliance, security heavy. Dropbox was use what you will, and we hope IT won't find out about it. And so, in the AI scribe space, we see a lot of these solutions that are very clinician by clinician, put a credit card down, shadow IT.
Yeah.
And we think that there's an upper limit to what you can do with those kinds of solutions because they're not going to be aligned with how the group thinks about billing, how the group thinks about quality measures. And so we've taken, not necessarily a top-down approach, but we've taken a more methodical approach where, either at a site level or at a system level, right, you're able to enforce those kinds of guidelines across your physicians. And, the physicians also like it because it means less documentation burden for them. Right?
Yeah.
So in architecting it in that way, I think is the right partnership between leadership and clinicians on the ground. I
think so. And the last thing you want is for a clinician to be comfortable with a tool that they've brought in and then to later find out that it's, not compliant and it's been blocked out. And so you want to be able to ensure that stakeholders are aligned there. Hey, you and I were up on a stage yesterday and I was moderating a conversation with you and Nika about taking AI from 0 to 1 and engaging with the investor community as well as the providers too. What did you take away from those sessions and the discussions that we had there?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, you can't walk 3 feet here without seeing AI, large language model, right? And it almost seems like there's a lot of talk of those, technologies without actual business problems behind them. And so if you can actually tie a business problem to it, it's just enabling technology, right? Like we don't talk about the cloud technology anymore the way people might have 10 or 15 years ago, right? And I think, that's something that we need to remind ourselves in healthcare, which is ultimately it's all just technology that is in service of a real problem for an end user, and in my case, a clinician. And doesn't matter if it's large language model, small language model, AI, machine learning, regression model, right? It's all in the service of were you able to help a doctor get home on time and chart more accurately.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, lastly, Sayvant, there's lots going on, lots of inspiration here at Health, new partners, new opportunities. What's really your focus over the next 6, 12, 24 months?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see our impact, both independently as a company on some of those efficiency metrics we talked about, but you're seeing much more, I think, eagerness across the ecosystem, right, of RCM trying to get upstream into workflow. You're starting to see companies that own clinical content or clinical guidelines, right, want to embed in workflow. So I think that's going to be a really interesting space over the next 6 to 12 months to think about how we, as Sayvant, right, that has a clinician's attention and focus at that point of diagnosis and assessment, incorporate, some of these either upstream or downstream entities, but not have it be, a steady stream of alerts that eventually a clinician will tune out. So we're really excited to figure that out.